That's right! Welcome to the side of the ring because it's time for Ringside. Got a bunch of news lined up for you, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado, we're just gonna whack! In addition to not being on Elimination Chamber next month in Australia, Dave Meltzer said on Wrestling Observer Radio that Roman Reigns isn't going to work Backlash in France either. Meltzer believes Reigns' upcoming PLE schedule is the Rumble, WrestleMania, a Summer Saudi show, and SummerSlam. Then Fightful Sean Ross Sapp just happened to post on X that whenever he asks his WWE sources whether Roman is working the show, they reply, quote, card subject to change. So, all that to say that he might be on the show, or he might not be on the show. Ooh. Okay. I don't know. I don't know anything, folks. I don't know anything. Okay? I know that I keep bringing this up, but to read a report, right? And for the report to say, oh, that's not gonna happen. You know, and my little lima bean brain is like, well, all right. If you tell me it's not going to happen, then I have reason to believe it's not going to happen. And if I read another report that says, hey, it's not going to happen, I go, okay, it's not going to happen then. And then it happens. I don't know what to do. You know, my wiring is all askew, right? So you got Dave Meltzer saying, oh yeah, he's not going to show up at Chamber, you know, and he's only going to show up at Mania and then not Backlash either, right? Which is like weird. If we're going to be honest here, he was at last year's Elimination Chamber, so I don't understand what the difference would be, right? At the very least, they have other titles to put in the main event, which is good, but, you know, it doesn't really help Roman, because, you know, he's like here today, gone tomorrow, so that's really not going to help his character, or like, you know, any of his, we're going to say fans, because he does have fans, people do like him, he does draw, so it's kind of weird that he's not going to be at Elimination. I mean, he's going to be at Mania, great, but it's going to be, and that's if he doesn't show up at Elimination Chamber, which again would be very odd. And I am going to have to agree with somebody on Twitter, which yuck, you know, they said that it would be a little bit weird, for him to not show, for your main champion, your main world champion, to not show up at a 60K plus venue, you know, for, I would argue, one of your very prominent pay-per-views, right? I don't think it's like your big four, but it's definitely, at least with the way the pay-per-views have been going these last, like, I would say like year and some change now, a lot of them definitely feel like a big deal, you know, and it would be very odd for Elimination Chamber to not have your marquee champion, you know. No shade towards Rollins, but I mean, like, technically he is like the like second world champion. Roman's the first, so it'd be kind of weird to not have him there. I don't know what's going on, if I'm gonna be honest here. So I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens when Chamber rolls around. Sticking with WWE, quote, Brock Lesnar will be back on WWE television very soon, according to F4W Online. I can only assume that means that they're going to build to a Mania match. I don't think that, because they said he was going to return. You know what, though? They did say he was going to return at the Rumble. So that doesn't mean that he's not going to be in the Rumble. But that also doesn't mean that, no. He could be in the Rumble is what I'm trying to say. Man, he could be in the Rumble. What I'm trying to say is that doesn't mean that he could not have a match at the Rumble. But we're going to go ahead. I need you to follow me along here. I think this might be building to Gunther versus Lesnar. Because if I heard correctly, Gunther is going to be in the Royal Rumble again. At first, I thought that he was going to put his title on the line in the Rumble. Thank God he didn't. But I think he's just like, hey, I'm going to be in the Rumble again, so watch out. And now we're hearing that Lesnar's going to show up at some point. So I assume Lesnar's going to show up and be like, hey, has anybody seen my ponytail? Also, I'm going to be in the Rumble. And then maybe Gunther's going to come out and be like, oh yeah, well, you're going to be in the Rumble. Well, who cares, because I'm going to be in the Rumble and I'm better than you. And then they're going to meet up in the Rumble, and then they're going to beat the paint strips off of each other, and they're probably, I don't know if it was Luke Owen or Ollie Davis on Wrestle Talk said that they were going to beat each other up, and then they were both going to go over and then keep beating each other up, and then that's how the Mania match was going to happen. And, I mean, that seems like, if I remember correctly, wasn't there a whole list of Mania matches that they wanted to have happen, and one of them was like Lynch and oh my lord, Rhea Ripley, man, Lynch and Ripley, and then it was Cargill, Flair, and then I swear one of them was Gunther and Lesnar. I could be wrong, but I swear that was one of them. And I mean, listen, sounds like a great match. I would love to see it. And this sounds like that's what it could be booking to. It may not be, but I'm gonna put my chips on this one. So that may potentially be what it is. Next, Austin Theory is in medical protocol following the scary spot involving him and Carmelo Hayes on last Friday's SmackDown per Wrestling Observer Radio's Brian Alvarez. In the Observer's daily update, Meltzer wrote that he had no update on if Hayes would be able to work his scheduled match on NXT tonight. He's in medical protocol. He's not in concussion protocol. I would argue that those are two completely different things. I would argue that if you got a concussion, you're going to concussion protocol. If you banged your head, but it wasn't that serious, you're in medical protocol. I'm glad to know that he is in medical protocol. I'm going to refrain from talking too much about how WWE stopping matches and all that sort of stuff. I swear I didn't hear anything about Austin or Carmelo having concussions. I think that they just seriously banged their heads up, but I don't think it was concussions from what I remember. I think that they were just being looked at and they're being evaluated and they were just trying to make sure that they're okay. I'm glad to know it's not too serious, right? No snapping or pulling or any ligament of any deal, right? It just so far seems like they're just trying to hold him, make sure that he's good, and they're doing the same thing with Carmelo. Good to know. If he's not able to be on NXT tonight, no worries, right? Same with Austin Theory. We're not gonna be seeing him for some time. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? The whole idea is I just want them to make a speedy recovery, and I would like them to be back in the ring at 100% and sooner rather than later. Next, contrary to a previous prediction, media analyst Brandon Ross at Lightshed thinks Warner Bros. Discovery will end up with rights to WWE Raw this fall. Ross believes this will be driven by WBD losing the NBA and doesn't necessarily mean AEW's next deal won't be with WBD. But if I'm WBD, I don't want Raw. I already have AEW. And I've already got a nice relationship with AEW, and I don't need Raw. Like, yeah, Raw's doing all right, but I'll tell you something right now. If I have AEW, and AEW's pulling a number, right, and I bring in Raw, and Raw's pulling in way more numbers than AEW, I'm kind of going to start pushing AEW a little bit lower down and not tell anybody, okay? There would be no reason to have Raw, and I don't know, is it just me? We're going to go ahead and say it's just me, just for the sake of posterity. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But then again, I swear at one point, I swear at one point USA had Raw and SmackDown. But Raw and SmackDown were part of the same conglomerate, so it wouldn't make any, so in that context, you know, it's alright, it's fine, because they're part of the same family, you know? Like, is college basketball and the NBA and college basketball are different. But, yeah, they're under a different, franchise league, right? It's a different league. So, technically, they're not really the same. It's like the USFL and the NFL. Well, sorry, the UFL and the NFL. It's not under the same league. So it wouldn't make sense for, like, Fox or Amazon or what have you, or NBC, to pick up the UFL. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that stuff works. I don't know how it works. So, that's kind of why I'm a little bit, choppy on the whole thing. I don't know. In my personal opinion, it wouldn't make any sense for WBD to be like, and now we've got two of them, you know? I feel like if that were to happen, like, how do I put this? AEW would, like, show their ass. And that's just my opinion. I feel like AEW would be shadowed. They would, by WWE. And I feel like WWE would also kind of get a bit of a punch. But if they lose NBA, then probably not, right? But, I mean, well, either way, I mean, wherever NBA goes, the viewers will go. And it would pretty much just translate, except it would just be like, you know, flipped, you know? So, I don't know. I personally don't know. Because I feel like that goes into just, you know, I don't know. I don't know. If it does end up happening, I would be very curious to see how that would affect viewers for both ends of Raw and AEW. So, I mean, that's even if it ends up happening, which I low-key don't think it is, but I could always be wrong. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Moving over to TNA. TNA had its largest gate in 10 years last Saturday for Hard to Kill in Las Vegas, according to PW Insider. The site also said Sunday's show had the former Impact's, quote, best live TV gate, at least since Anthem bought the promotion in 2017 and possibly ever. Unsurprising then that Insider also heard morale at TNA was, quote, through the roof after the weekend. It's safe to say that TNA is currently going through a renaissance right now, and I would argue that that has a lot to do with many different factors. One of them is more wrestling, right? We're coming into this with an open mind, and we're coming into this with a positive mental attitude. We're not going into this going, oh no, TNA, or oh, how are they going to screw this one up? No. We're not doing that. If anything, I would argue that TNA, we'll say TNA, formerly known as Impact, has definitely been improving these last couple years, and they've been putting on fantastic matches, and you've got wrestlers all over the place, you know, popping in, popping out, you know, definitely showcasing their skills and what have you, right? And a lot of it also has to do with what I just said, the popping in and the popping out of wrestlers. And I talked about this previously, right? Where you've got guys like Nick Nemeth and, you know, Will Ospreay and Christian, you know, coming in and sort of like peppering the product, right? And I think that adds a level of unpredictability in a positive sense, because it's like Scooby-Doo Guess Who, you know, you don't know who's going to be on it. And I think with that level of surprise and intrigue, it brings even more eyes on the product. And then you've got TNA, just the name alone, sparking that nostalgia in a lot of people. And you know, there were some good moments of TNA and there were some bad moments of TNA, but I think, like I said, that more people are leaning on the good moments that TNA brought. And, you know, again, a lot of people are looking at this and they're saying to themselves, I am looking forward to what TNA is going to bring to the wrestling landscape as a whole in this modern era. You know, TNA back then was different, and it was under a different umbrella. And now, you know, you've got so many different trends of wrestling that are sort of floating around that TNA could pick up on. And I think that is ultimately going to help TNA in the long run. And I think just overall, again, I know that I keep saying this, but I really think that the fans are going to have a gigantic role to play in how well TNA does. And that's why I feel like TNA is going to do fantastically, because we're not in the era anymore where, or I would say that the era of extreme tribalism is kind of like washed out now. I think everybody just wants good, solid, you know, coherent wrestling to be on their TV screens. And TNA definitely is a company that is willing and capable of providing that. So I'm definitely looking forward to what TNA has in the future for its, you know, wrestlers and storylines going forward. Finally, PW Insider has now heard that Trinity didn't finish up with TNA yesterday, and in fact has, quote, several more dates on her contract. So this is what I said in a recent episode, where I was basically saying that, you know, she's pretty much just gonna wrap everything up. And it obviously is going to line up with Royal Rumble, because that is more than likely when she's gonna show up, right? So, yeah, there's not really much to say. I already talked about this. Because I already read a report that was talking about how, you know, she had like a couple more dates to fill out and stuff, and I was like, yeah, makes sense, more obligations, you know. She's probably gonna show up at the next two shows, right? And then she's gonna be like conveniently radio silent for like a week, and then bam, she's gonna show up in WWE. So yeah, I mean, listen, she could not show up to WWE, you know what I mean? Like that's where we are now in the timeline. She could just not show up and be an NJP. That'd be great. Can you imagine she shows up in NJPW? Just saves everybody. That'd be fantastic. No, but I think she is gonna show up in WWE, and listen, I can't wait to see her there. What do we talk about? All right, I don't think that Roman is not going to be at Elimination Chamber. I feel like Roman is going to show up there. I don't know what the match could potentially be. It could be Orton versus Roman, just to sort of carry that on. Or they could do Styles versus Roman. You're right, because, I mean, if you've got all three of them in the match and he's still winning, you could argue that one of them could be like, hey, well, you didn't pin me. And if Randy's not getting pinned, because that's what they said that Randy's not getting pinned, right? So you could do Roman Orton at Elimination Chamber, and then boom, there you go. And then, you know, Cody Roman at WrestleMania. So I mean, it's pretty much writing itself out as of right now. But I mean, he could not show up at Backlash. If you really didn't want him to, you could not show up at Backlash. But it'd be kind of weird for him to not show up at Elimination Chamber, right? So let's move back on TV. I assume that's to build towards the Rumble. That could potentially build towards Gunther versus Lesnar. We're gonna have to wait and see how that unfolds. Theories and medical protocol, and Hayes might not show up on NXT tonight. That's perfectly fine. I would rather them be at 100% than both of them show up and they're still not really like 100% clear, right? Brandon Ross at Light Shed thinks Warner Brothers Discovery will end up with the rights to WWE Raw this fall. Ross believes this will be driven by WWE losing the NBA. I just don't see it. I don't see it. But I don't really have a whole, structured leg to stand on for my belief in that. But I'm just looking at WBD, and it just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense why WBD would be like, hey, let's have 2 wrestling shows on here. I just don't see it. It just doesn't make sense to me in my small brain. That's all I'm gonna say. TNA had its largest gate in 10 years last Saturday. And the site also said Sunday's show had the former Impact's best live TV gate. So again, TNA is definitely going through a resurgence right now. And again, that has a lot to do with the crowd and the positive affirmations and the open-mindedness and the fact that there's more wrestlers floating around than there were before. And we're in a completely different wrestling landscape than we were back in 2007, right? 2008, the mid-thousands, right? So I think with that in mind, TNA is definitely going to be doing a lot better than it was before, The morale is through the roof. Again, unsurprising. And Trinity didn't finish up with TNA yesterday, and in fact has several more dates. So, going to be putting a nice bow on all the storylines and what have you. And just, going to be saying her goodbyes and hugging everybody and that sort of stuff, which makes a lot of sense. And, then she's going to head on over to WWE or MLW or NJPW. Who knows? Listen, if I were you, I'd keep it in the back of my mind. So, folks, on that note, that's going to do it for this episode. Hopefully everybody has a wonderful day and a wonderful tomorrow. And as always, big hugs. Big hugs all around.